Not hard.
Okay, are you ready? Hi, I'm Kippi, and I'm here with my husband Blake, and we are two of the founders of Bahama Bucks, and we are here today to share and reflect on some stories over the past 35 years that Bahama Bucks has been in business, and we're excited to talk about flavoring lives.
Yes, we are. Okay, this is fun. After kicking off our franchise journey together, it took us 20 years to get 20 stores. Talk about what that time was like.
The
20 years to get 20
Yeah.
stores.
I'm going to let you take that one. I think you can start that
You
one.
know, I think on any journey, any adventure, your beginnings are always memorable. And for me, we always talk about it, and we tease about it, the growth of Bahama Bucks, because 20 years to get 20 stores, how I love to say it is, we put some, not bad, or we put back-to-back bad decades together as far as growth was concerned. But it was a huge adventure. You, Eric, and myself, we loved some of those seasons. Now, they were hard seasons. You're raising young families. You're early in your career, things like that. But from a standpoint of just simple, pure fun, we were having a blast. We just weren't making any money.
Yeah,
and I think that's where some of the toughness and grit came in is, man, you're doing everything you can to survive, whether it was extra jobs or, moonlighting or working, insane hours at Bahama Bucks for free and all those things. So, there's a lot in 20 years there.
Yeah, we were 23 years old and trying to start a franchise company. We were idiots.
We didn't know what
we didn't know what we were doing. And then for the Coopers, our first franchisees, to actually buy a franchise from us and trust us. Yeah. And we didn't have our systems in place. We were young, which was, I think, a great advantage because we were so energetic and were willing to do whatever it took to make it happen and work those long hours. But we did not know what we didn't know. And I remember through those years, those 2 decades of, there's a couple of things we always say. One, I used to pray just, daily that God would allow us to sell 100 stores. Like, Lord, if we could just sell 100 franchises, please let this brand grow. And had we sold 100, we would have not made it because we couldn't have supported it. There were 3 of us in the support center, and we wouldn't have been able to support the brand, support the franchisees, and build the brand the way that our vision saw it. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing I remember is we just didn't have any money. And so we laughed about brand name chips and eating beans and rice. And it's true. We were doing those things and making all sorts of crazy concoctions with beans and rice, and Eric doing all sorts of cheap meals that fed us for lunch. And but that's what growing a business looks like. And, sometimes people don't see that side of it. But I think just growing the brand the way we have over the 20 years has been part of our story, but also what I love about the brand.
Yeah, I remember one meal Eric and I used to eat, and he thought it was the greatest thing ever. Now, Eric is such an accountant, but he figured out how we could eat a meal for 28 cents.
Yep.
28 cents. And he bought a bag of rice. He bought that 50-pound sack of rice at like Sam's or Costco or whatever. And he bought ragu. And he would boil rice. We'd put ragu on it. And all 3 of us would eat for less than $1. And we were like, out. It was so awesome.
I was out. Saltines and peanut butter. I'm like, Eric, I'm
and
out.
One of the things we did, remember, because when we first got married, we didn't have any money. I remember you drank Diet Coke. I was a Dr. Pepper fan. And we couldn't afford either. So it was like, okay, which one are we going to?
Yeah.
And so we settled on regular Coke, classic Coke.
We would just share a Coke.
And that's what we started doing. Yeah.
So,
but I think when you sum up the 20 years to get 20 stores, there was such a humbleness about it, because I think that's what makes the brand so relatable. As leaders, it makes us somewhat relatable, because we walked it out. We understand what it is to have a struggling store. We understand what it is to have a hard season, or when your kids get sick and you still have to go to work and do all of those things. That was our story. And I liked that, like it or not, it just punches the pride right out of you.
It does.
It really does.
Yeah.
And so there just wasn't a shred of pride. We weren't prideful about anything. We were grateful for everything because it came
garage
at
sales.
a cost. Yeah.
Everything was from a garage sale. All my baby clothes, kids' toys. it does humble you, but it's also, we thought it was great and it worked and we made it work. And I think that's part of why we appreciate where we are today.
Sure.
And we still, I think, feel that way today. I think
Yeah.
we're like, man, this brand can grow even more. And we're excited for what the future holds, especially now that we have such an amazing team of people. So that's able to support our franchisees in the way that we envisioned it.
You know, and some of the things that we still do today that come out of that 20 years, you know, when I think back of even like Free Snow Day, how we just bless other people through Free Snow Day, that was a direct result of us being challenged in our own lives. I just remember one night, you and I laying in bed and, you know, we're always crying about something because something goes wrong or we missed a bill or we couldn't pay this. And I just remember thinking to ourselves about, you know, we can do more, we can do that. And it was that one summer, you know, and we still, the big number for us in our family is 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
And we walk into a 7-Eleven, and for the first time, they were, yeah, it wasn't their first time, but we discovered it for the first time. They were doing free Slurpee Day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you knew the Buchanans, we always bought one Coke. We had 3 kids, one straw, and we just passed it around till it was gone.
Yep.
And everybody got their sip, and we'd throw it away. And I'll never forget, we walk into that 7-Eleven, and all of our kids got their own cup and got their own straw because it was free Slurpee Day.
Yeah.
And we were blown away. Our kids were blown away. It was the first time they ever got their
I know.
own
I
Slurpee.
remember exactly which 7-Eleven it was. I remember all the kids skipping kind of to the car and holding their own cup. And that was just a cool moment for our family to, I don't know, it just resonated with us. And because we've always shared a drink. And even as our kids got older and teenagers, I remember one time one of the boys took a girlfriend with him to the zoo. We went to the zoo and he brought her
And he's
with
in high
us.
school at this time.
This is high school, yeah. And we stopped at one of the little kiosks and we got a Coke. And we got the largest one and we got one. And we're all just total normal. We're going to share our Coke. If you've got a cold, you got the flu, let's just share the Coke, you know? And then we passed it to the girlfriend and she's like, I'm good. And we're like, oh my word.
This is a weird thing we do as a family. We are so sorry. We will buy you your own Coke. You're our special guest. Here, have your own soda.
Blake and I looked at each other and went, oh, wait, this is not normal. We don't need to do this for everybody.
Yeah. But from that one experience, because I just remember, you know, we get home at night, we saw the joy it brought to the boys, how happy they were to have their own straw. Mm-hmm. And we were laying in bed and we were like, there are people just like us. And we have the ability to bless others. And we couldn't afford it. We couldn't do it. And we purposed in our heart to rally the franchisees around it. And we chose the first Tuesday of every December to be Free Snow Day.
Yep.
And now over 100 stores participate every year. It's our biggest community give back, all because of a single blessing of our kids getting their own straw.
Yeah.
And we love to go out there. We work it now, and we see all the families that it blesses. And so I know for you, for me, that is just one of those near and dear things that came out of those 20 years, which a lot of things came out of the 20 years. But
I think,
like
another
continues.
kind of question it's to me that segues right here is that what was it like having 3 kids and us owning a business? And I was homeschooling the boys, which anyway.
Yeah.
There was a lot of teachable moments.
I don't know. We blocked all of that out. It's a blur.
Some of it is a blur.
Yeah.
I don't know how we survived, to be honest.
I think anyone with 3 kids, you know, or 2 kids or 1 kid, anyone with kids relates a little bit, but 3 challenging sons that were full of energy. You know, we always say, man, it was a house full of camo and ammo. I mean, those guys were playing hard all the time, and you had taken the responsibility of homeschooling, and because we were traveling, we were opening stores. And I think those are some fond memories. I mean, you're going to speak into homeschooling, but I just remember being able to take our sons and they would sit there and open stores and they all had their own knives and they're breaking boxes down.
Yep.
And, you know, to this day, we have the Bimini ring games and they can grab it one swing, ring it every time because they've got about 3,000 hours on that little swing game that we played forever.
Yeah, not ideal. I mean, we would bring our 3 boys and Tom and Cindy would go with us and open shops and Tom, you and Tom would do a lot of the construction part and I would do the training and Cindy would do the decor and our kids pretty much ran around and destroyed everything. But they played outside. They played on the patio. They broke down boxes. They would unload, you know, all of the gallons of concentrates. They would help us with unpacking all of the boxes and the supplies, and they knew where to put them. And so I have pictures of the boys working when they were 4 at shops, and they would be there with us for 12 hours. I mean, they would. Yeah. And the biggest joy was going back to the hotel that evening and swimming. So we would always try to find a hotel that had an indoor pool, because that was what drove them. Hey, as soon as we finish, we can go swim. And I mean, even if it was 9:30 at night, we're like, y'all are going to hop in the pool. And, they did that with us, and that's just what it looked like. And it seems so picturesque, but it was a nightmare to have 3 little boys. I specifically remember opening a shop one time in San Antonio, and it was a beautiful shop with some trees over to the side of the store, and there was a culvert. Is that what you? Culvert.
Yeah.
Underneath,
a drain
underneath the highway that was right in front of the store. And so I'm training. I have all these newbies in the shop. I'm training this new owner, and the boys had been playing out on the patio, and we let them go play over in the trees. And I am in the middle of training, and I look out the front window, and my kids are across the highway. They had crawled and ran under the culvert, and my children are on the other side of the highway. And I'm like, oh my word. And so
not only were they on the other side, they're waving at us.
I know.
And we were telling them to stay, do not cross the highway. Oh, please go back under the culvert.
Parents.
Return the way you came, through the drain, through the muck.
Yes.
And indeed they did.
So parenting, maybe not always the best, but we were working, and we had our kids with us. And so, like I said, we homeschooled in different ways. Here's what a culvert looks like, and here's what you don't do, and here's all the things that they learned working the business with us.
In opening stores too, I remember the skill sets that they gained, but I remember Ron O'Brien, we were opening a Saxy store. He was one of the early franchisees. And what was so neat about our franchise family is they all had families too. And so sometimes their kids would be up there and things like that. But I remember Ron, he took True, put him on his shoulders, and we always had all those swag lights on the patio. And he just started handing True
the light bulbs.
And they stayed out there, and that little kid was just sitting there screwing in every light bulb just so Ron didn't have to, haul a ladder around. And it was so gracious of that man.
Yeah.
But they did pick up some skills. They could crawl through culverts and screw light bulbs. So,
and they knew what gallons, quarts, and ounces were. That was my.
They mixed a lot of flavors.
Yeah, they mixed a lot of flavor. So, I think overall it was good. It was tough, and we couldn't afford babysitters and daycares and things like that. And that's just how we made it work. And we were building a business.
Yeah,
and
it was a family affair for sure.
Yeah.
So. Yep. I mean, a couple of 3 generations there, because you had Tom and Cindy, you had yourself, myself, and then Zylerjet and True.
Yep.
And then obviously we'd bring teams out with Ingram and other people that helped early on, and they would start as well. So, yeah.
Praise God we have evolved, because that would not be ideal.
Okay. What's something from early days of franchising that felt like a huge hurdle, but is now a fun story to tell?
I go back to the story of branded cups.
No, we don't go back to the story of branded cups.
We don't?
We shouldn't.
There's part of building a brand
that's true.
You have to, you can't build a brand and have white cups and clear cups. It's got your product has to be branded, and you've got to spend money on that. You've got to invest in design, and you've got to invest in all the sizes of cups, and knowing that our brand, when it walks out the door, it resonates in every aspect of where it lives, and but that's
so the dream for us was branded cups.
It was a dream.
We could just get, because we had this color changing spoon, which was awesome. We had the umbrella that was awesome, but if we could just get branded cups. And I remember
it's a big investment.
Yeah, it was, because you had to take a full semi down, and not everybody would talk to you. And so we finally took a couple of semis down. We got all the sizes of snow,
which we have 4 sizes of snows.
8, 12, 16, and 20. Got all those, and that was a huge investment.
Yep.
And we just knew it would work.
And then we did the smoothie cups.
Then we did the smoothie cups next, yes.
PET cups. And the last one was the sodas.
Which came with an ultimatum.
Right.
Yeah. So Kippi and I had moved into a guest house behind Tom and Cindy. So we ran out of money. So we moved our 3 kids into their small 2-bedroom little guest house behind their home.
Correct. Very grateful for that,
Yeah,
by the way.
super grateful
That's
for
a whole
Tom and
nother
Cindy.
story.
Yeah, that we'll unpack that one some other time. But we were just dealing with some issues at that time financially.
Yes.
And Kippi looked at me and she said, "So help me, you better not buy Coke logo cups before we're able to move out of here."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Psst, no way. We're not getting Coke logo cups before we move out of here. We will move out of here before I do Coke logo cups."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I knew what it cost. You know,
Right,
you had to buy
yeah.
a semi-load and of each size.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you could take down branded cups,
Right.
especially to be able to support our franchisees and get them out throughout the brand. It
And we were
wasn't
saving for a down payment. We wanted to get a home.
Right.
Yeah. So,
and
and lo and behold,
I go to one of the shops and here in Lubbock, because I would pick up sales, count money for the stores, and went into one of the stores and picked up the money out of the safe. And I look over and, by golly, we had branded soda cups. And I was like, we're still in the guest house, and where did these come from? And this was, thank God, where you could actually take pictures with your cell phone and send them. So I just took a picture of the 32-ounce Bahama Bucks soda cup, and I sent it to Blake. And man, did I get radio silence. I totally got ghosted from my husband.
You know, gentlemen, when you do something and you're like, "Hey, I'll tell my wife about this," and then you never find a good time to tell your wife about it. Wow. Yeah. That one, I punted that one a little too far, I think. So
Yeah, that was a rough conversation for Blake and I. I was, but of course they got a great deal. And this guy that had the company that had done our other cups said, "Hey, we can do your Coke cups for this price."
Yeah. And Eric was all in. Clearly, he didn't make the
course.
same promise to his wife. So
Yeah, that one stung a little bit, and it seems so insignificant, but it was so significant.
It was kind of next level for our brand. We felt if we just get branded cups, man, that would really put us on the same playing field with everybody.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I know.
Thank you for your sacrifice, Kippi. It was well worth it. So, but nobody ever knew.
No.
Yeah, so.
That's just part of it. But yeah, that was tough. But anyway, there's a ton of stories that go like that.
All right. Why did we start creating our own flavors, and then how do we do all of that? So let me jump in here because this is kind of a fun story. When I first opened Bahama Bucks, I buy some used shavers from a gentleman, actually one used shaver from a gentleman, and we meet in a parking lot. We make the exchange, and he asked me this one question. He said, "Hey, do you want all the flavors?" And I hadn't even thought that far. I was just buying the equipment. So this is early OG, haven't even opened a store yet. And so he gave me these flavors, and I saw the brand on them, and it was a little place called Caribbean Ice. It was in Littlefield, Texas, and they had all these flavors. And so I just called them up when I opened and said, "Hey, you mind if I buy flavors from you?" And they were like, "Absolutely, you can buy flavor from us." So I remember the first year we bought all their flavors. The second year we go to keep buying their flavors, and
We'd fax the order over.
yeah, we had faxed it over, which we thought was the greatest technology ever. So we drive all the way to Littlefield, pick them up, and bring them back. And one day, the lady that owned Caribbean Ice was very nice. She had about a dozen locations, and she met me at the door and said, "Hey, we got a problem." And I was like, "Oh, no, the fax didn't go through." But she was like, "No, I'm just not going to sell to you anymore." And she's very kind about it. And as I pleaded, because I'm thinking, "What? You're not going to sell to me anymore?" And she was just like, "Your one store is buying more flavors than all of my stores." And it was just an issue of scalability. She just, let me cut him off. I can take care of my own. Totally understood. But in the great state of Texas, if you run out of, blue coconut, people are going to tip your snow shack over. And so we were fearing for our lives at that point. So I just came back. We talked to Eric. Eric's got a very good analytical mind. We knew a lot of people that were in food sciences, and, we had people that were biology majors and chemistry. And so we just grabbed centrifuges and stuff, and we just started breaking all the flavors down. And I remember it was so fun to say, okay, now this is pre-internet, so we don't know really what we're doing. So we're learning to bake a cake without a recipe. But we just started bringing flavor extracts in from all over the world.
Well, and we went to the tech library.
Oh, yeah.
And
sorted
got out
everything
phone books and looked
the
up.
OG internet, the library.
Card
Remember that?
catalog, all those things. And we just did a ton of research and called some places and spent money on long distance phone calls and
All the things you do.
Yeah, and had some friends help us that had a little more expertise in those types of chemistry items.
But the original flavors were just handpicked by us because we'd build something, we'd taste it, pass it around the room, and then we'd be like, hey, this one's great. Let's build this one.
Yeah. I remember we tasted a cherry one time, and it tasted just like Tylenol cough syrup.
right.
And we're like, that is the wrong cherry, you know, and we've got to tweak it. And we didn't want it to look like a maraschino cherry. We wanted it to be a dark cherry that represented more of a, real cherry from the fruit stand, not a, fake cherry, not a Jolly Rancher cherry.
And that's hard to do because it's not 3 different cherries. It's not 30 different cherries. It's 30,000 different cherry extracts that are out there. So that was the origins of it, of us just kind of taste testing with our friends. And lo and behold, a decade later, we're a full-blown flavor factory. And we're like, this is crazy what we do. And now, Matt Ewing and R&D, who has his whole team with Travis and all those guys, I mean, they do a beautiful job. But we still sample it, to people. And now we can do it all across the nation. We get feedback, all of that good stuff. And so I love those focus groups. Those are, I tasted something the minute I got into the office this morning, 3 different flavors that they're working on. And I still love that we do that.
Yep.
So,
I just went to a grand opening in Houston Monday night or this past week, and they came out and someone didn't pick up their Nerds Snow, and they're like, hey, anybody want this Nerd Snow? And I waited, and I'm like, I'll take it because I still love the product, and it was delicious. And I just love eating the product, and I like trying new flavors and figuring out what our guests want and what's fun and exciting. So when you think about our flavors, what are when I think about some of the old, or I don't know, memorable flavors that we've done, which ones resonate with you, Blake?
Some of the bad ones, because when people ordered it, it was just going to be a total bad experience. It was like peanut butter. I mean, for sure. They ordered it and like, this is not going to go well.
No.
Never. And so that one had a short shelf life. And there were fun ones. I know Pickle has a great place in your heart. That was a big one.
Yeah, when we first developed Pickle, we had a lot of guests asking if we could do a pickle flavor. So all of our flavors, we add sugar, pure cane sugar to them. And so our first rendition of Pickle, Eric added sugar, so it was sweet pickle, like sweet relish. And it was disgusting. But we didn't have any kitchen, like our R&D kitchen or anything, so I would open the shop in Arizona pretty much every day. I would work in the office in the morning, then I would go open the store at 11, and Eric would come down at those opening hours and do a lot of R&D and test flavors and add the sugar water to them and that type of thing. And so I had just found out I was pregnant with our first child, and sick as a dog. I mean, could barely keep anything down. And then Eric decides this is the perfect time to start developing the pickle flavor. And he'd worked on it before I was pregnant a little bit, and then we never could get it right. So now he picked it right back up. And oh my word, it would just permeate through the shop, and the smell. It smelled like a pickle factory. And I was like, Eric, your timing could not be worse. And but we ended up developing a really great dill pickle flavor that doesn't include sugar. And it's been a top seller for years after that. But I vividly remember the smell, everything, because I was a new pregnant mom, and it was It was rough.
And it's funny because people think about flavor development. It's like there are multiple colors out there. I mean, billions of colors. And the same way with flavors. There's so many flavors out there. And, one of the OG flavors that still runs today is Jungleberry. And I'll never forget, like Stephen Lint, one of the OG employees, he took all the berries, put them all together, and we thought it was so good. We're like, bro, let you name it. And he's like, Jungleberry. And he just thought that's the greatest thing. So his legacy lives on, and that was in the early 90s.
Yeah,
that's how some of those came about.
One of my most endeared, I just love that kid.
Yeah.
And he was one of our first Avalanche crew members in Arizona at the Tempe store. And he loved the brand. and I'm just really proud of who he is as a young man or dad. He's not young, anymore. But we love getting feedback and ideas from the crew and from our team, because if it all was up to you and Eric and I or Tom and Cindy, we probably wouldn't have the fun
We'd
flavors.
narrow it down to 31 flavors.
One of my
right?
favorites too was when we did Twisted Snow, and we thought,
that was
how fun
terrible.
would it be if we colored our banana and made it red? Because we can color the flavors any color we want. And so we thought, let's do this kind of color palette of grape can be yellow, strawberry can be green, and banana was red. I can't remember the actual
they were
color
just
combos.
twisted
They were just
colors,
twisted
yep.
snow, and we thought the guests are going to love this. And man, you taste with
They
your eyes.
hated it.
They hated it.
They hated
It was
it.
a flop because banana cannot be red. It's weird. And so it messed with your mind. It messed with your taste buds. But it was fun. I thought it was a fun thing to do. Pancakes and syrup was terrible.
Sure.
Even chocolate. We have a hard time making chocolate. It doesn't ever taste right.
Yeah, it didn't taste right, so we called it Tootsie Roll. Remember that one? That was fun. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that one,
Yeah.
RIP, did not last long. And then I feel like the glazed donut,
Yeah.
cute, great media, but not a good flavor.
We thought that would be so funny, and it was for about 15 minutes, and then nobody ordered it, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, that's a
Nothing
terrible
like
flop.
a greasy snow cone, or greasy snow, I mean. Then also juicy fruit.
Yeah.
We did the Wrigley's Juicy Fruit Gum. And
You know, the one, though, that I think that is bygone, that was such a trend for, early 2000s was when we launched pomegranate. That one had a good run.
Yeah.
That
one
was,
was
and it
good.
really was a good flavor, but indeed it had its run, and then we retired. And when we retire flavors, those are hard too, because there's a lot of flavor fans out there that is their flavor,
Yeah.
and they rarely will forgive you
maybe
for
we
getting
need
rid
to
of
make
it.
a Flavor Hall of Fame, and that you get. But
I'm
then
not sure
that
the
would just
flavors
be-
we're talking about would be in it, though.
No, that's true. They
It'd
wouldn't.
be like
They
a
would
Hall
be
of Shame.
just the Hall of Shame. We have Hall of Shame and Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
have that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. How did the slogan "Flavor Your Life" originate, and what does that mean to us? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember we had some radio ads that we ran that
Yeah.
were horrible. Those would be in the Hall of Shame. That we had produced in a recording studio for our brand to run radio ads back before internet music and Apple Music and Spotify. All those things
Right.
were not there, so a lot of people listened to the radio. So we had some radio ads made, and they ended the slogan at the very end was like they would say Bahama Bucks, flavor your life, and
Right.
that was the slogan that they used. That was 90s, like late 90s. We did those
early
ads.
2000s. We registered it as a registered mark, almost a little over a decade ago. So we've been using it for quite some time. But it is interesting because that's the one that I'm sitting here thinking I would really have to probably powwow with Eric and somebody. Usually most of the creative, Eric's the number side, I'm usually the creative side. And that's just one where it just fit. And if I remember right, what pops or bubbles to the origins of that was I read a steak sauce or something there that talked about, savor the flavor or something like that. And I think we just started working the words. And I think the origins came from a steak sauce that I had read. And then we just, as the marketing team got together, we just kind of, it bubbled up to the top.
Yeah.
You
and
know.
it's just stuck.
Speaking of good words, so I love Flavor Your Life. Now, what does it mean to our company? Obviously, Flavor Your Life is what we want to do, right? Flavor Your Life embodies that mini vacation that we bring up and that we try to execute on in our shops and everything. But I do love how Flavor Your Life, really wants you to just live adventurously, tell your story and go on your journey.
Yeah.
And we want to flavor your life along the way. So I love that.
I do too.
Another word that came up, and this is one of my favorite words that we've ever coined, and it was not me. And this was at Snow Summit, and we were trying to smash words together where you can take words and smash them together. And I'll never forget when Ariel said the word snowful. Because it was like joyful, and it was all these words that we were playing with, and she's like snowful, and we lost our minds in that meeting because we had so many terrible mashups.
We did.
And when that one popped out, snowful, we were like, oh my gosh, that is us.
Yeah,
That's
and
who
if I'm
we
not
are.
mistaken, I think it was COVID, during the COVID year, or
Yeah,
the
right about
COVID
then.
Snow
Yeah,
Summit.
exactly.
And I think that's another kind of like flavor your life. It just fits our brand.
Yeah.
And we've used it as an adjective. We've used it as a noun. We've talked about it as being snowful. And so I love that word for our brand, because we want to bring abundance. And
Yeah.
I feel like that word just encompasses abundance
Yeah.
and an abundant joy. And that's what we hope our guests experience when they come in our shop,
Yeah.
if it's to celebrate or to get away from something, or to get, erase a disappointment, or, even if the kid lost the soccer game or they won the soccer game, come and flavor your life and have a snowful time at Bahama Bucks to either escape
Yeah.
your sorrows or celebrate your joys. And I think that all of those little words have been great way to just let people know what our brand's about.
Yeah, and I think when you see the brand as a whole, but when you see our people, and I'm talking franchise family on all the way to our support center, there is this spirit of innovation, okay? Because, you're starting, we started so young, and you just had to invent and think and figure out. And what made us so creative was the limited budgets. I mean, we couldn't
Yeah.
do anything. So we just had to get real creative, and we just learned to use our mind and the tools that we had in front of us. And I think that's resonated with all of our teams and really helps with the, a good spirit of innovation.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've read over and over again, is working inside the box. Stop thinking outside the box, stay inside the box you're in. And that's where some of the most creative things have come from.
Yeah. Now, this one asks to share our favorite flavor stories. And I know we've done some. I've got a couple, but, one that, oh my gosh, one of my favorite ones that I love to share, because most people don't know about it, is how Princess came to life.
Yeah.
And it was one of those where our sons are finally older. We had never gone to Disney. We had never gone to Six Flags. We just worked all the time.
Yeah, we didn't.
And we look up and our kids are now in high school and we're like, hey, maybe we should try.
Rolled a roller coaster in
Yeah,
your life,
we should take them to an adventure theme park. They would get their own soda.
Well, we homeschooled. We did
Yeah.
zoos. You
So
learned
there you
stuff
go.
at zoos.
That's right. So we go there, and I'll never forget, because I'm sitting in front of the Magic Kingdom. Guys had run off. You're grabbing, food or something. And, I see this guy walking towards us with his daughter and his son. And I just remember the glow she had, because she had already been blinged up.
Yep.
I mean, head to toe, tiara, magic wand, glass slippers. I mean, bippity boppity booed up.
Yep.
And I remember grabbing the phone, calling Matt Ewing and just saying, bro, I got next year's flavor. And he's like, what? And I'm like, it's Princess. And he's like, what does it taste like? And I'm like, man, I have no idea, but it's going to be filled with bippity boppity and boo. Let's do this thing. And it wasn't till months later, when you hopped into our vehicle, we were going to go on a date, and you had bought a new fragrance. You step into the car, and I smelled the fragrance, and I'm like, that's it.
Yep.
That's it. That's what Princess should taste like.
Yeah. I don't
And
know.
so
It's a
called Matt
smell.
again. I said, hey, go buy this fragrance. Let's break it out. And we took that same fragrance. We found the ingredients. Now, it's not all the ingredients, and it's an
Just what
exact
the
replica.
undertones were of
Yeah.
the scent, which were vanilla base. Actually,
Yeah.
I think the perfume was pure sugar or something,
pink sugar.
pink sugar or
Yeah.
something. And I
And
had bought
so-
it, anyway, it doesn't matter. But it did have that
That's
vanilla
what we
base.
developed it out after. Now, here was the big point. It was a limited time offer. Remember, we only ran it for 3 months, and then it goes away. Now, we had done Superman and Kryptonite and, Ninja Turtle and all these, because we had boys, and it was the first time we'd done this girl flavor, and it went gonzos.
And it was delicious.
Right. And when I turned it off, I'll never forget, I'm sitting in a board meeting. I get a phone call from Anissa, our sister-in-law, and she's like, okay, here, you talk to your nieces. And they are bawling because they are in our shop and Princess is gone.
Yeah.
And I just said, Anissa, hand the phone to the manager. And I just said, hey, do you got any in the back? He's like, yeah, we got a little bit. I said, all right, pull it out and make it. And that was our first time we ever extended a limited time offer and put it on the national menu that same week.
Yeah.
So Princess taught us a ton of lessons. And it's still one of my top 10 flavors. I
Right.
love it with the Princess sprinkles and everything. So I love that one.
Yeah. I mean, man, when we first opened, I was a diehard strawberry cheesecake. I
Oh, absolutely.
loved
Yes, you were.
strawberry cheesecake. It was the bomb, and it's still really good. But I have diversified my taste palette. And
Yeah,
one
that's
of
what you
the
have.
ones that we created was when we started adding chamoy and chili salt to the snow. And I just thought that was so gross. I was like, oh, that's so weird. Why would you put that on fruit? And now that's all I get. I love it. I love mango with chili salt, chamoy, add a little super sour strawberry. And I mean, I want, my mouth's watering right now. I want one. Every time I go to the
Absolutely.
shop, that is what I get. And
Because you are sweet and spicy.
maybe so.
Those two merge together
They
for your
did. They
perfect
merged.
combo.
Hey. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Love it.
But there's some great flavors out there.
Okay. Any products that flopped? Oh, wow, man, our list is long there. Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Hall of Shame. We'll talk about products that have flopped.
Yep.
The first one that comes to mind, now there's several, but the first one Eric and I thought was a great idea, and I can't believe we fell for it, is we were going to diversify our product mix. So we decided to buy Sunday
I
dishes.
was going to say that one.
Yeah, those little Sundays
Like
we
banana
did.
split
We said
Sundays.
it's a snow split, remember? And we put 3 balls of snow in it, and we flavored it up. And then we put bananas on the side and a little whipped cream. We're like, oh, people are going to kill this.
So bad.
It was terrible. I don't know. I was like, what are we thinking? Oh, man, it was
know.
terrible.
That
And then
was
remember, another product that we really thought had, and it was so good, it really was so good, was when the Houston Astros, we were working deals with them, and they're like, hey, can you be our cotton candy provider? And we're like, absolutely, man. We do flavors, and we can spend
Make
sugar.
cotton candy. Oh, that was.
And we made cotton candy, but we did blue coconut, and we did strawberry and blue raspberry. We did birthday cake cotton, and they were so good. But oh my goodness, it was so hard to make, and we just finally
Well,
said
it wasn't that it was hard to make. It was hard to package it.
yeah,
and
hard to
keep it.
package. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. Hard to package and keep it.
One that I think is so funny is when we created our smoothie line, and one of our smoothies, we just wanted to just kind of really do a wow. We did the whistling wedgie.
Yeah.
And
It's always Eric. It's always Eric that gets you in those situations because remember, and Eric is the reason super sours came along.
yeah.
Because in Arizona, in our early store, remember we had that kid that came in. It's like, what do you got that's sour, man? And we'd be like lime, and he was like, that's not sour, and we're like lemon. That's not sour. And Eric says, oh, what's this?
Right.
And he went back and he mixed up citric acid and all that,
Yep.
and he's like, hey, I got a super sour one, and it blew that kid's mind.
Yeah.
Because it was the equivalent of like a Warhead sour.
Right.
And I love that, Eric thinks like that. So when we get into the sours, Eric was like, we need a sour smoothie. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody does that. And then we did, and he named it a whistling wedgie. And people would say, what does that mean? We're like, turn around, we'll show you. You whistle, I'll pull.
So bad. It was such a bad product.
So anyway,
And it tasted
props to
terrible.
Eric. That's why Eric, he's still on R&D, but he's behind the scenes. Or is he on R&D? Did we take him off? He might be. Who
Oh
knows?
my gosh! But it did. Everyone would come in and go, "What's the whistling wedgie taste like?" And we're like, I don't think you want to
one
order
question
that.
you
but
shouldn't ask at Bahama Bucks filled with
Yeah.
teenagers and young
more
adults.
citric acid than you need in a year.
Yeah.
Your vitamin
So
C
you got all your
content will
vitamin
go
C
up.
in one spoonful.
Ooh, that was rough, but it was funny, and everybody always asked about it.
Yeah.
Those were some flavors or products that I felt
Yeah.
like were flops.
Speaking of Eric, let's go back to some of the slogans. Because the slogan that came out of a
Yeah,
slogan,
what are some flop
and this was
slogans?
early on,
Yeah.
is when Eric wanted to help do a T-shirt. Now, again, Eric is numbers driven, one of the smartest gentlemen. I mean, he is our math bro. I mean, this guy is so good.
Yes.
And I'll never forget, the slogan he came up with for a T-shirt was terrible.
Yeah, I think it was save a polar bear, eat a snow, or
Save a penguin, eat a snow.
penguin. Yeah.
And to this day, we've never deciphered that. We were like, save a penguin, eat a snow. Save a penguin. Like, if we eat all the snow, does it really save a penguin?
I don't know what he was
And
thinking.
he thought, yeah, that'd be so cool. We're like, no.
We
no.
never did it.
And so the slogan that came out of that was eat yellow snow.
Yeah.
And because we thought that was so funny. And that was early 90s. Gosh, man. And I remember we put it up in Harkins Theater. It just said, eat yellow snow.
Oh yeah, we did take. We did
Yeah, remember
promote
that? It
in
was
the
in
movie
between the
theater.
things. And people would be like, oh my goodness. And it just said Bahama Bucks. And that was just our nod to our
But what's
humor
funny
side.
too is people in Arizona, or let's go to Puerto Rico, who
Yeah,
never
never see
ever
snow.
see snow, they don't understand why that's funny.
So they ask. And we're like, turn around and give you a whistling wedgie while we're at it.
But it's a great slogan until it's not. And people are like, what's so great about that? So,
Okay. Who came up with the color changing cool spoon? And that's a real fun story. The origins were back when Kippi and Eric and I were in that first snow shack. I mean, we were looking for something different to differentiate us because we had a white cup. We had the umbrella. And I'll never forget the company. It was Dixie. And they did a pink spoon that turned purple.
Yep.
And the first spoons back then cost 12 cents. And we were like, oh, yeah, we can eat this because it's 75 cents for a snow. Yeah, so we'll just, eat up most of the profits right there. But we thought it'll be so worth it, right? And I remember it went to 18 cents a spoon. And then when it went to 25, it went to
like
23 and then 25 cents. We were like,
every time you would hear,
somebody drop
a spoon, you'd be like, oh.
It puts you in a moral dilemma. You're like, brother, you don't get another one. Yeah, sorry, pick it up, wipe it off. Yeah. And so I just remember that. And so we stuck with it for as long as we could. And then it went away for probably maybe a decade, maybe not quite a decade, maybe 10 years. But I'll never forget, we were watching a Super Bowl ad or something, and Coors Light came out with the color changing, strip on their beer that would turn blue. And we're like, oh, the technology's back. Yeah. And it's actually an organic technology. And so we started tracing it and all that. And we worked with a company, and we said, okay, here's the deal. We want a spoon to change colors. And they were like, what? And I'm like, I promise. I had some old ones that I'd kept, about $1 worth, 4 of them. And we showed them what we're doing, and we're like, here's the technology. Here's how you can do it. We just need your equipment to help us make this thing happen. Yep. And that has been an icon for us. That cool spoon has been an icon, since really our origins. Yep. So props to the people that do that technology, and
and
really
I think
cool.
The thing that people don't think about is it is something that our franchisees. It's a hard ask. It's it's an expensive spoon compared to just doing. We call them whitey tighty spoons, but they can't do white spoons or whatever. But they're so much cheaper than the cool spoon. Yeah. But it is part of our brand. What sets us apart. And it's what flavors lives.
That's right.
And
remember when we got to design it, because we're designing the mold, we actually had people eat with different spoons because the bowl is deeper on certain ones, and this one's elongated and all that. So there was all this technology that went into all the 3D modeling and everything, and we get these samples and we try to no, that's not it. Right. And so that's why it is so unique to our brand. Yep. Yep. And I love that we had an Easter egg on it, and we'll just leave it at that. That's right. So that's so fun as well.
But that's just something that, we'll have people, or I'll have friends send me a picture from they're cleaning out their high school, drawers, or they're moving out of their parents' home, and they're sending me a picture of a Ziploc bag with the parasol pick, the umbrella, and the cool spoon. It's something that identifies us and our brand. People save them, they reuse them, and it just sets us apart. And it's a great spoon. It does. It's a perfect. And
it was so cool because I remember back in the day. This was decades ago, or a decade ago at least. But Trix had a cool spoon in their box, and then they stopped. The cereal. And I was like, how dare they? But then then they took it out, but you could write them and get one. So I wrote General Mills and got one, or wanted one, and it never showed up. So I was like, Brandon, it must have been a 25-cent spoon. Yeah. So anyway,
probably
fun stuff.
Okay. Do you remember when we found out that we were the largest importer of umbrellas? The parasol picks?
Yeah, I do remember because I had to move to container sizes. And it was an interesting conversation with the importer, and because he's like, what are you doing with this? Because really when we talk about umbrella picks, it's fun to tell the origin story of the umbrella too, because we're in Lubbock, Texas, trying to put a paper parasol pick in a drink. The only place I could get those was on the Strip, because Lubbock's a dry county at the time. We had to drive all the way out to the Strip where they serve alcohol. And I would go into, these liquor stores, and I'd be like, hey, man, I got to buy all your umbrellas. And they could not believe, I'm 20 years old buying up all their umbrellas, and they could not believe what we're doing. So once we got big enough that we could take,
I would go to Party
down,
City and buy all their
all the Party
picks.
Cities. We'd buy them everywhere. And then once we got that little, and they don't give you a certificate or anything. It's just a casual conversation. And they're like, hey, you're the largest importer. We're probably the largest importer in the world now, but at first it was in the nation. But yeah, shout out to umbrellas and all of our avalanche crew who diligently open them and pop them, as we say, every single day.
Yep.
So love the iconic umbrella.
Part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, we've talked about this a little bit, but what are your favorite flavors? And that's with an S. So you don't have to just go with one because you just mentioned yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you my all-time classic. My all-time classic when I first started Bahama Bucks, I would hit cherry like it's going out of style.
Yeah, cherry's great.
And then I moved to blue coconut because I wanted the status symbol of the blue mouth. And that was really good. But then it's funny as you evolve and, we've tried all the flavors and all of that. But I just remember this past summer, I got on the cherry Coke train like nobody's business.
Especially during COVID, we would go to the shop and you'd want cherry Coke.
Cherry Coke or
with
gummy
cream.
bear. Remember I was hitting gummy bear like crazy because I put on like 35, 40 pounds. You're like, where's all this coming from? I'd just be sitting there eating a box of gummy bears.
Yeah.
And
You
so
did like the
gummy
stuff.
bear was huge for me. But cola, and I think when I look back, some of those are nostalgic flavors for me because I had them as a child.
Yep.
I always love the ones that we launch and the new ones that are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I've been on this little nostalgia kick and just revisiting the old school stuff.
Yeah.
So are you still Mangonada Extreme?
I mean, I love mango super sour strawberry with chamoy and chili salt. But I mean, if I were to think about the OGs that are just classics, you can't. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention strawberry. Our strawberry
Absolutely.
is excellent.
Yeah.
I think banana. If you like banana, I went on a banana kick for a while. When I was opening the shops, I would eat a banana snow every day. The sour ones always, have a place in my heart, like pink lemonade, lime, lemon. All of those are excellent. But as a child, my favorite snow flavor was vanilla. And
that's so
when we
good.
first opened Bahama Bucks, just getting vanilla with cream, it takes me back to when my mom, we'd have a big snow in Lubbock and we'd make snow ice cream. And that's exactly what vanilla with cream tastes like. And it takes me back to those days. And so vanilla, it's classic, but man, it's delicious. So.
Yeah. And there really are. That's what's so fun about being a flavor factory is we get to try all the flavors and introduce them. And then you almost get profiled with a flavor, And remember everyone who ordered butterscotch? That's why we took it off the menu. We're like,
Yeah. Are you identified as a butterscotch flavor?
Yeah. Or whatever. So it is interesting how everyone resonates and they find their flavor and then that is their flavor.
Yep.
So
it's hard to get people to change
switch
once they
flavors.
find it, which is fine, until we take it off the menu, then we hear about it.
Yeah, and I love that they, like when we go to weddings and people are serving wedding cake, but it's our snow.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's fun.
It is. It's
Now,
good.
just for flavor profiling, you are the sour person.
Yes.
I am the sweet. She loves the tartness.
I do.
And I tend to gravitate not overly sweet, but to the mid sweets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. I like sour stuff.
Yeah.
It's good. This is kind of that same, like, what are your favorite products? And we just talked about that a little bit, but I also love the acai bowls. That is something that
Acai bowls?
Acai bowls.
No, you said it right.
However,
I'm teasing. You
my
always
West
correct
Texas
me.
is going to help me say it definitely incorrectly. But I just think those are they're a great option for a meal replacement, a very healthy snack. And we first had those bowls back in California, back in maybe late
Pre-COVID.
It was pre-COVID, yes.
Yeah,
I would
for
say
sure.
2015 or something like that. And that would be a snack that a surfer would come get when they would get off the beach. And they would have that maybe like their breakfast or after they had been surfing for several hours. And we discovered them in California at a little local place. And I wanted to go get one every day.
Yeah.
And so we thought, man, that fits our brand. We can Bahama Bucksify them, make them ours. And we really, really have seen huge growth in that line. And I think that's one product that I need to go get more often, but I love the bowls.
Yeah. Those are great. I'm a soda freak right now, and I love that they've come back. And one thing that's neat about our shops, we do some amazing sodas. I'm a Dr. Paradise guy through and through.
Yes,
so
you
that
are.
that one is so good, and I'll never forget because as a little kid too, it's nostalgic to me.
Yeah.
But I think what helps us with the soda stuff is being at the support center, we got the full training facility, so we can invent any sodas.
Well, and
make
I don't
any
even
sodas
know
we
that our
want.
guests
Yeah.
realize that all of the flavors we have can be added to any soda.
Yeah,
So
that's
if you
exactly
wanted a
right. You
grape
want a
Dr.
pickle soda,
Pepper,
pickle Sprite, there you go.
yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
you can do whatever you want, but we just try to narrow it down for the guests. But you can add strawberry to a Sprite or lime, whatever you want.
All right, Kippi, rank these discontinued flavors from favorite to least favorite. And I'm going to give you 6. Glazed donut, sweet tea, blueberry muffin, peanut butter, pancakes and syrup, twisted snow.
Okay, well, blueberry muffin would be the first that is the best that got discontinued.
Yeah, I would echo that. That is a great flavor.
Yes, blueberry muffin we still get comments about taking blueberry muffin off the menu.
Yep.
People are still a little bitter about that one. Man, from there, kind of drops off. Twisted Snow was fun because we didn't change the flavors of anything. We just changed the color.
The image of it.
Yeah. And
It's
so
changed
I thought that
everything.
was really a fun twist, and just the guests didn't want to buy them. Then, gosh, all of the rest of them,
Pretty equal.
they're all pretty
Sweet
equal.
tea was good, though.
Sweet tea was good. It felt like watered down sweet tea. It
Yeah.
tasted that way.
Yep,
And
yep. And that was a hard flavor to mimic, but it was good. And then glazed donut, peanut butter, pancakes, and syrup. Yeah, all of those are just on the bottom.
nope.
I
Not
would-
not
I
when
would-
you have flavors like birthday cake and
Glazed
sugar
donut
cookie.
actually tasted good, though.
Yeah.
Pancakes
It's just
and
sugar
syrup was
cookies
a little
better.
mapley, and then peanut butter was just dirt in a cup,
Peanut butter was disgusting.
Yeah. And I know we could do it better, but
I just
it's
don't think guests want a peanut butter snow. I don't know that.
Maybe if you had Wonder Bread and some jelly.
Yeah, some jelly, peanut butter and jelly, half and half. Could do something like that. Well, what's been one of the most unexpected, memorable times that we've had with a guest
Oh.
or experience?
Oh, well, we can go on and on.
I
here.
know.
My favorite one is Valentine's
Oh,
early
you can't
90s.
tell this story. I hate this story, but it
It's
embarrassed
so good.
me
It's
so much.
good. We had a couple in our shop. It's Valentine's night. Kippi and I doing the romantic thing. We decided, why don't we work a shift together?
Yeah.
Let Eric go out. So we're closing the shop. This is early 90s. And a couple comes in and they're sitting there eating
This
their
is at our
snow.
shop in Arizona.
Yeah, in Arizona.
Where we had indoor
And he had
seating.
bought her a rose, and it was real sweet, and he paid for both, et cetera, et cetera. But they're sitting there forever, and we're closed, and now it's 10, now it's 10:15, 10:30, and we would not sweep people out. We'd stay as long as they wanted to stay. And so finally they get up to leave, and they leave, and Kippi goes. And, by this time we've got the shop pretty much closed, and we're knocking the lights out, and on the table, they had left the rose.
Yep.
And you were like, oh my gosh, it's one of those roses. And I'm like, what is that? And she's like, Blake, this rose is a pair of panties.
Because it's like something you see at the checkout at Walgreens. And you're like, really?
okay.
Like, who buys this stuff?
Kippi used to buy a dozen. We'd buy them by a dozen. Anyway.
And, and he goes, those are not underwear. And I said,
I'll never
I know
forget
they
it
are.
because I have the perfect angle at her. We're about to leave. The doors are behind her. The glass doors are behind her. And I'm like, Kippi, that's not a pair of panties. And she's like, yes, it is. And she takes the rose and she starts doing this and she unravels it. And right as she pulls them out,
They weren't quite
dun,
that big,
dun,
I don't
dun.
think.
right as she pulls them out, dun, dun, the guy knocks on the door and she turns around and she's
I'm
like,
holding the
oh
underwear.
my gosh. She's sitting there holding these unraveled rose panties. And she kindly gives them to him.
I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
We ruined the surprise. I don't think she had any idea that's what those were. So you ruined somebody's Valentine's.
Oh, they were
So-
embarrassed. I was embarrassed.
Yeah.
But that one,
We've had
we've had some great guests. And I think now that we're not working in shops, it's a different experience. But when we were working in stores, especially our Arizona shop, it had a bar where the guests could come
come
and
up
sit right at the
just
bar.
pony up.
So it was like Cheers, the
Yep,
old
yep.
sitcom. And we had guests that would come in and sit there for hours and just talk
Yeah.
to us. And Cliff and Maverick. He changed his name. Anyway, they were very interesting high school
We helped
guys.
them through their adolescence at our little bar there.
Yeah, they sat and would hang out with us for hours.
And remember that guy who came in with the white boa constrictor all around him? And that's when
Yeah.
I enforced the no pet policy
Yeah,
because I am deadly scared of snakes.
Yeah,
I
that was an
like,
interesting
No, hey,
guest.
we don't do that here.
We've had so many great guests,
yeah.
but I think now what I wish I could work in the shop more and be more engaging with the guests and get their stories. But what I do love is hearing the stories from our franchisees and our managers and how, this was the only thing I could eat when I was going through cancer treatment because the chemotherapy just fried my throat and my taste buds. But this was the one thing I could get down. And you hear this over and over again from guests that the product really flavored their life and made a difference for them through some hard things and celebration. This is where we had our first date and now we're married and we want Bahama Bucks to be part of our wedding, or those types of stories, they're so impactful and you almost can't take it in when you hear people say how the brand has been a part of their life through hard times, or this is where, as a single mom, when I first went through a divorce, this was the one thing my son and I would do together every Tuesday night because, Susie was at dance, and this is what he and I would come in and play games, and it just has such sweet memories for us for years. And you're going, it's just snow, right? And that I can't take it all in sometimes to know how people have engaged with our brand through their life, and the stories are just so deep and so sweet.
And I love when guests teach us things. And, even going back to the original Shack, Kippi and I are dating, there was this worker, he was a city worker, he was an older gentleman, and he came every single day and at 11:47. He was there every single day and he bought a medium cherry every day, medium cherry. And we'd see him pull up, be like, hey, medium cherries here. We would have it made.
Yeah, this is before like drive-through speakers. So we had to
you
truly
just
pull
knew,
up to the window and you would get their order at the window.
And he came up and, after, months of this, I was like, this brother's going to have to try a new flavor.
We have so many good flavors. You got to try something new.
This guy needs a new flavor in his life. So we don't make it. He pulls up, he walks up to the window. He walks up to the window. It was our small shack. And I'm like, hey, man, I know you get a cherry every day. And at that time, I probably had 90 flavors, 91, I think is what we had. I said, I got 90 other flavors up here you can try. Do you want to try any of these? You want to try any of these? It's on me today. I want you to try something new on me. And he gave me the best piece of wisdom. He looked at all those flavors and he said, hey, man. I was like, yeah. He's like, you like your girlfriend there? I'm like, yes, sir. He said, you love your girlfriend? I'm like, yes, sir. And he's like, do you have to try all the other girls to know you like that girlfriend? And I'm like, no, sir. And he said, give me my damn cherry. And we gave him his cherry. And
we had it ready for him every day.
About 4 months later, we proposed and we got married. All because of cherry. So that's why cherry flavored my life.
That's right. That's right.
But those are the lessons you learn. In Puerto Rico, there was the guest. We had visited our team out in Puerto Rico in such a sweet shop. And their hospitality is over the top there. Over the top. Fernando and Chuck and those guys and their team just do a great job. But I'll never forget because a young man walked in with his mom, and they said he comes very often, and I just happened to be there, but he was deploying the very next day.
Yeah, he was deploying military. Yeah. I believe he was going to the Marines.
Yeah. And I just remember having the honor because, Fernando wanted to introduce me. He was really thrilled that, we had started Bahama Bucks. But I just never forget, I got to look him in the eye, and I got to say, brother, you got this. You got this, man. And I just hugged the kid. And the mom told me later he didn't have a dad, and he sat there and just wept and wept and wept.
And that was that was a coincidence that they came when we were in Puerto Rico. It was such
happenstance.
Yes.
And just the ability for me to have raised sons, to know what it is to launch them into the wild, but just to speak some life into that young man and have that moment. I'll never forget that moment. And that's where a lot of times where your guests are impacting you probably more so than you're impacting them.
Right.
So
It's
anyway,
just hard to take it in.
such
sometimes.
sweet guests. Yeah, such
Oh
sweet
yeah,
guests.
we have
That's-
story after story after story, and I think even more, Blake, on that one is our teams that have worked in shops, our avalanche
Yeah.
crew. For us, I think that's also a layer of part of the guest experience, but also our experience that we give the team,
Yeah.
and how we see them grow,
Mm-hmm.
and we see them grow up to be great adults, and that they go and do great things, or they met their wife at Bahama Bucks as they were working there, and
Certainly.
all of those different stories and experiences that the brand gets to be a part of is just, it's overwhelming to think about.
Yeah.
And when you go back to us being that 22-year-old, before we were even
We were
married,
20 when we started. Yeah.
I mean, we would have never thought about that. And now looking, even when we were 20 years old, one of my sweet college friends, Connie Gilliland, one of our first employees, really
Yes.
one of the first Avalanche crew, she ends up marrying the Coke rep,
Yeah.
and
Our
her
Coke driver.
driver.
Yeah. Nolan.
Nolan, and then Nolan and Connie have this beautiful daughter named McKaylee, who was one of our managers in our shops in Lubbock, who now works at the support center and is like one of our rock stars.
Mm-hmm.
But her mom was one of our first Avalanche crew members. How? It's just crazy. That is,
Yeah, I know. It's wonderful.
yeah. And I'm so blessed by Bahama Bucks. It's flavored my life and has taught me so much. But then I think about the impact that it's had and how we've just intertwined people
Sure.
with the brand is really cool.
Yeah.
So
Agreed. And speaking of that, when back to Puerto Rico just for a minute, you remember
Oh, wow.
all their team learned sign language because they have such a high deaf community there, and that was so special for us to see that and be a part of that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
good stuff.
I know. I know.
One of the most inspiring stories from a franchise owner. Wow. Okay, well, you really. There's a lot of sifting here that goes because, the one that bubbles to my mind, and it was actually in a discovery day. And do you know where I'm going with the New Mexico?
Yeah.
Your story or mine story?
Alicia Gonzalez.
Yeah. So Alicia Gonzalez and her husband, and she actually came to Discovery Day, and she tells a story. And because I asked, hey, why are you here? We just kind of opened with that question. She said, I'm going to tell you a story. And she said, I recently had, she has sons and kids and all that. But she said, I was dropping my son off at college. And she said, Blake, I'll never forget what happened. It's one of those college days. You've got your son, you're frustrated, and we are lost on the campus. I can't read the map. And she said, my son's getting frustrated with me. I'm frustrated because I'm lost. And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, Mom, I've got this. I want you to leave. And she's like, he's a freshman. How am I going to leave my freshman here? We don't know where we are. And he says, Mom, I got this. Please leave. And so she does. And she said it was one of the most courageous acts because what you don't know about my son is he's blind. And I had to turn around and leave my blind son, who's lost on a new campus, go get in my car and leave. And she said, if my son can show that type of courage, then I don't fear anything.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of Bahama Bucks and open a business. And it just stuck with me for a long time because not only did he find his way, he graduates, he becomes either a teacher or a professor there. And it's this beautiful story of just overcoming fear and doing hard things. And that is a family that not only has inspired us, but they've inspired our brand.
Yeah.
They're just great people.
I love Alicia Gonzalez. She loves people so well.
Yeah.
And her and her husband are amazing business owners, and they're just good people, and they treat people well.
Yeah.
And that's when you have a franchisee that has a heart of gold like that, and they're all about impacting the community, but also just owning a business and giving opportunities to young adults in their professions and jobs. They're just really, really good owners. A couple, I have a couple, but I've always loved Ron and PJ O'Brien. They were one of our first franchisees, and then their son Spencer opened shops. He actually worked in the Lubbock shops here too when he was in college. But Ron and PJ are just kind people. They always did the right thing, and they ran their shops and treated guests well and treated their community well. So I have a sweet space in my heart for Ron and PJ. But our recent franchisees that opened in Prescott Valley, Nicole and Justin, when you hear, and again, all of our franchisees really have great stories of why they are where they are at this point. So it's hard to just pick a couple, but Nicole and Justin, fostered children for, since they were married. I really don't know how far that goes back, but all of their children that they have adopted are their foster kids. And there's, how many kids do they have?
Plenty.
Six.
Yeah, I want to say six or so.
And that may be wrong. So, but they just have such a sweet story of how they sacrifice and give back and love wholeheartedly. And now they have this avalanche crew that they are pouring into, and they're like, they're our kids too. But their children were, helping and loving to be a part of it. And that's so inspiring to see people that just put themselves out there, and they foster children and they adopt children and they give them a home, and then they run a business and they foster and develop 30 young teenagers, and you're just like, wow. And they're so inspiring. Their life is inspiring. But I can go down so many people. We have some incredible franchisees that not only run good shops, but they have amazing lives in how they love people, they give back to the community, and they run businesses well. And that's really...
Yeah. And I think that's what you see, the heart of the franchise family. It's like 2 years ago when the tornado tore through Clarksville.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I mean,
Bill and Sierra.
Yeah, they stepped up in a huge way. They took their trailer, converted it to a food trailer. And when you hear even Sierra's story and Bill's story, where they came from, and they've blended a family and they've restored all these things, and now how they serve in their community, how they help their avalanche crew. I mean, it inspires us. We're like, wow, this is amazing what they do.
It is.
Paul Terraberry spoke at Snow Summit last year. And he's one of the youngest franchisees we've ever had. And he grew up in our system. He was an Avalanche crew member who buys a distress store, turns it around. And I just remember one quote that he had in there when people were asking him, well, how do you turn a shop around and what do you do? And all those things that he was unpacking. But the thing that stuck with me is he said, it takes the time that it takes. Mm-hmm. And you have to work it until you get it right.
Right.
And I've always just remembered it takes the time it takes. So whether we're, growing kids, growing a family, growing a brand, sometimes it just takes the time it takes.
Yeah. And the thing about Paul, I think the story that he told there was how he cleaned the bathroom.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes think people were like, man, if I could just be my own boss, then I wouldn't have to do that anymore. And I would mop a floor again, and I'd be telling you hear these stories, and people are like, if I could just be my own boss. But the thing is, when you become that boss, you are a leader. And if you don't clean the bathrooms, they're not going to clean the bathrooms. And if you can't humble yourself, you have to do those things. That's what makes you follower. People will follow that. And you can never, to me, be above cleaning a toilet. Yeah. And if you ever have that mindset that you're above that, I mean...
Yeah, and forgive me for shortchanging the story, because what Paul did was he said, I'm going to clean the I'm going to earn the hearts of the Avalanche crew. I'm going to clean the bathrooms every day. So every time it needed clean, he cleaned the bathroom. And he said, one day an Avalanche crew is going to say, let me clean it for you. And it took a year.
Yeah.
And some young gentleman finally said, hey, Paul, you clean those every day? Let me do it this time. And that's when he knew.
Yep.
And that's when he said the quote, it takes the time it takes. and he's talking about growing a store, developing people, and winning hearts.
Yep. And you just have to be a leader people want to follow. And if you can't get down in the trenches with them, then you're going to lose that, or you lose that influence. You know, even the funny, I went back recently at our office. We didn't have janitorial service for a while, and we were in the interim of finding someone to clean our office, because we always cleaned the office back in the early days. That's something.
When you say we, what do you mean by that?
We, you, me, and the boys.
Yeah.
And we did it every weekend. We would go clean the corporate office, and we cleaned a couple of other insurance company offices. And we had our routine and cleaned toilets, and and we did that until what year did when did we move into our office?
2014.
So yeah. And so just recently, within the past 6 months, we lost our janitorial service at our support center, because we don't clean the office anymore. We handed that over.
Yeah, once it got too big, it's like, that's a little much for all of us.
And we needed someone to clean it for a minute. And you and I, it was just funny, I think, because it's ingrained in us from so many years of doing that we knew we would do it. And so the office would close, you took the men's, and we just did it. And I didn't think a thing about it. I was like, then we'll figure it out until we don't have someone. We'll clean the toilets, and we work here all day, and we clean it. And that was like 6 months ago. Yeah. And I just think you can never get in that mindset. And I think that's what I love about some of our franchisees is they have that mindset of, hey, let me help you make smoothies. Let me help you mop the floor. Let me help you. And knowing that you have teams that can do that, and you've got to train them, but you can't be above it. Yeah. And that's what I think builds a great shop, and builds great leaders, and builds a really, really promising future.
And it is that hard to serve, and they do have that. And I think that's what makes the magic happen at Bahama Bucks, is we're going to see and serve others to the best of our ability. You know, going back to cleaning toilets while we were doing it at the office, and mopping and doing all of that, one of the neat things about that is, I'll never forget Tom Buchanan, my father. He was walking by, and he's like, "What are you doing?" Because he saw me pushing the janitorial cart. Like, I got to clean the office. And he just put his stuff down. Yep. And he grabbed a mop, and he grabbed everything. And we had the best time, and he would just help me until we found a new service. Yep. So, it did take us back to kind of the old school days where you absolutely did everything. But it is that heart of, hey, let's just do what it takes. Don't be above doing anything, whether it's mopping, cleaning the floor, or whatever. And that's where the magic really lies.
It does.
So, this has been fun.
Yes.
Anything else to close it out?
I mean, no, I think I'm always going to leave going, oh, I forgot this story, or I forgot to talk about this specific experience, because it's been 35 years, Blake. We've had a ton. And I can't put it all into one sit down conversation. There's no way. But again, it's fun to reminisce and think about the last 35 years. And I'm also just like, how did we get here? How has it been 35 years? It just flew by. But it's life.
Yes, it is. So it's been a journey, and it's been fun, and it's been a privilege to flavor your life alongside you for all the guests and everybody else. So love our support team, love our franchisees, and love our guests. Man, that's the secret to success, is just serve them all well. So.
Yep. And at the end of the day, it just all comes down to loving and serving people.